Hello, everyone. This is Dorothy Guerrero from Global Justice Now. Welcome to our serial weekly interview, Southern Perspective on the Global Coronavirus Pandemic. COVID 19 is changing our lives and has forced us to break with our normal. In this interview series, I will feature representatives from social movements and progressive groups in the Global South that are addressing the pandemic. Global Justice Now wishes to share with you what is happening in their countries and, more importantly, how the movements are imagining and shaping the world anew. Today, we have a well respected activist and public intellectual from South Korea, Dae-hoon, or Francis to non Korean friends. He was a co founder of People's Solidarity for Participatory Democracy, which campaigns for socio-economic reforms and peace in the Korean Peninsula. He was also former director of the Asian Regional Exchange for New Alternatives, or ARENA, based in Hong Kong. He now divides his time as a peace studies professor in Songkong-hwa University in Seoul and his new organization called Peace MOMO, which means learning from everyone. Francis, thank you for joining me today. So can you tell us what is the situation there with coronavirus? What we see from the news here is that the situation there or the number of the affected people are quite contained. So can you tell us more? What is the situation there in South Korea?
Right. Since the infection came from early January this year, we experienced similar things like in other societies. But luckily, we didn't have a very much panicky situation until now. I think it's mainly due to a quite wide range of responses from very early on by the government and a kind of functioning national health services system and the disease control center knowing what it is doing. So the infection rate has been kept until now. There are about 10,000 Korean citizens who have been infected, including a few foreign residents in Korea, and the overall testing has been done to a little less than 1 million people living in Korea. And the fatality rate has been kept to around a little less than 2%. So until now, we have around 200 people passed away because of the disease. The life has changed a lot, as you can expect. The transportation, the streets, the classrooms, and the normal life space have emptied. Uh, uh, my life has changed a lot. I usually stay at home these days. Most things are done online. Schools, they reopened after 1 month of postponement online. So there are now online classrooms going on. The economic impact is now being felt by people. There has been massive layoff especially from aviation industry. The outcry of crisis is being heard from all sectors of economy from these days. There is a very intense discussion about relief fund, relief loan from the governmental level. The talk is around emergency relief fund, governmental fund in the range of 82 billion US dollars to be released within a couple of months. So these are the situations. So people are asking questions. What's the next? When will the next wave? Will we live in the same society, same way in this year or next year? There are many questions, many debates and talks going on.
Yeah, that is very interesting that South Korea seemed to act fast when the pandemic started, or even before it became a pandemic, the government was able to act fast. Can you share with us what are the factors for these quick responses and quick actions? And can you say that this is something that is built in the system, this kind of preparedness?
Built in, but quite recently built in. Our assessment, general assessment in Korea is that it was a decisive and crucial moment about 3 years ago that we were able to change from a very conservative authoritarian government into a very functioning democratic government through massive, almost half a year, massive demonstrations on the streets.
Thanks
And
to
so,
social movement for
right.
that, right? Yeah.
Yeah, of course, democracy is always debatable, and the level of democracy that this government shows is also debatable. But it seems the previous government, when they handled MERS infection, the situation was much, much worse than the current situation. So the general assessment is that the relative control of the disease infection and spread is due to functioning government and experienced health system.
Can we say then that everyone is coping well, or are there sectors in societies that is not are not coping well? Are there problems in some sectors?
Well, I think I have to be very, how to say, conservative on this evaluation, because now we are just experiencing the first wave of corona infection. So in terms of containing rapid, widespread of the disease, the situation seems to be under control. Now the daily infection number is less than 50 now, and the people are being treated, almost all of them are being treated medically, and the, how to say, recovery rate is also increasing. So that's a good sign. But now the impact is being felt on daily life, especially on economic sense. So massive layoff and labor rights violations, and in terms of social, psychological negative response, racist, xenophobic responses, how to deal with this. These are now being coming to the surface.
Yeah, I want to go on that part. Who are the targets of this xenophobic reaction? Are they the migrants or other?
Like other countries, we have a problem of a conservative political forces, conservative party being quite powerful in the parliament and in the society. And they still maintain this, the cause of the disease is China related, and the name of the disease, Wuhan disease or Chinese virus. So this kind of, how to say, a chauvinistic and propagandistic politics is there, and this affects the public. And the more rational part of the society and politics are trying to contain that kind of propaganda politics. So these are the debates, and the usual target are either Chinese nationals living or coming to Korea, or even foreigners and Korean ethnic Koreans coming from China to Korea might be frequent subject of these attacks.
Okay. Can you tell us this time what are the efforts of coming from social movements and non-government organizations in addressing the pandemic, and what are there, is there a coalition happening or an alliances happening, and what are they doing?
There is a wide ad hoc coalition among trade unions and social movement organizations and NGOs on protecting the socially vulnerable groups from the economic impact mostly. And the trade unions are very quick in calling for economic and social protections for the workers, especially in the vulnerable sectors. And those people who are outside, we call it, who are still in gray zone of labor law protection, self-employed, small-scale employers, transportation workers, and contract workers, and so forth. They are especially vulnerable these days. But it's in the economic sector, in terms of health service, most of the testing and medical service are now for free. It's done for free
Very good.
when it's related to coronavirus. So, but the one part of the government, labor ministry, whose main job is to inspect whether labor laws are being applied and labor protections are being given universally to all forms of labor, that's problematic. And that's what labor unions are mostly focused on.
Mhm. Mhm.
What I find weak in the response of social movements these days is that uh, we are not yet discussing enough or being prepared enough for the
Mhm.
second wave and third wave, or even another spreading of another virus.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because corona is now mostly seen as a special case,
Yeah. Yeah.
and in my view, it is not. It is systematic, it's a civilizational, and it's capitalist.
Mhm.
And I think in in these topics, social movements in Korea have not formed any coalition yet, and
Mhm.
have not had sufficient discussion yet.
But are there circles that are thinking the way that you do? That this is a systemic problem, that it comes from the system we are in, and especially the problematic way of production, consumption, and the way that the economy is run.
Yes, these agenda are coming from these discussions are coming from some of the progressive movements, and but mostly ecological progressive ecological movements. They are
Mhm.
calling for rethinking
Mhm.
of the industrialization of food industries. They are calling for rethinking of urbanization policies,
Yeah.
policies focused on urban areas.
Yeah.
But this is very, very minor and weak voice.
Mhm.
I'm concerned about
Uh-huh. That is very interesting. That even if it's still at the moment a minor voice, and you said that there's no coalition yet forming on this one. Are there efforts from the side of PSPD or your organization, Learning from Everyone, Peace MOMO? Are there efforts to start gathering people to discuss that, and at the same time, how what do you see would be the glue that will form a kind of coalition like that?
that. I think we are just beginning to cope with these dimensions of the problem. In the past 3 months, I think most people, including social movements and NGOs, we are very concerned on the level of spreading of this disease and the social reaction to it. Now, slowly, groups are asking whether we will be living in the same world after coronavirus,
Mhm.
and whether we have democratic and uh, egalitarian redistribution of resources in
Mhm.
terms of ecological crisis like this one,
Mhm.
whether our society is ready to accept that this is not a special case,
Mhm.
but this is will be a repeated case unless we change the system.
Yeah.
This is just the beginning of the call. These small calls are coming from different sectors, but it is not converging into a movement yet.
Mhm. Mhm. In terms of international perspective, I know you being an internationalist. I met you in the international circle before. What do you see are the possibilities for international solidarity? Are people thinking as well that this is not just a problem inherent to South Korea or Asia, but since it is a global pandemic and it needs a global solution? So, what do you see as possibilities or seeds for forming an international solidarity, or strengthen existing international formations and networks and alliances? What are the potential for building it in South Korea?
Well, if I may divide our responses to crisis into short-term responses and long-term responses, the protecting labor rights and providing support for vulnerable groups and giving social protection and trying to control the spread of disease and responding in a rational and controlled way, not in a panic way, and maintaining responsible leadership in the government and in the society. I think these are very important aspects in
Yeah.
short responses. And I think these are crucial at this stage. I support that. But at the same time, in the long term, I think there is an opportunity for a new international social movements or new solidarity for social movements. Because I think what we are witnessing in the US and Japan and the UK, Europe, and so forth is that the current leadership that have been formulated in the late 20th century and early 21st century, they do not know, they are not ready to lead the country and the society in this kind of crisis. And if someone would like to interpret the world as, strongly affected by US hegemony, now we have the first real testing ground that US hegemony has not affected positively in any part of the world in this crisis. I mean, it's a kind of how to say, a new ground of raising questions whether the former leading countries are able to lead or even give some insights to world problems.
I think that is a very important message.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you for the last question. What message do you want to share with us here in the UK? We are seeing analysis and trends as well that we might be the worst hit in Europe. Is there any message that you can give to us here with social movement organizations in the UK?
Well, I don't know. This is Korean contextual understanding. I don't know whether this will become good messages to you in different contexts. But in our experience and context here, having a functioning democratic government with a rational mind leadership who is not bluffing, who is not exaggerating, who knows how to think in scientific terms and statistics. These governance are crucial in dealing with a new crisis. And the traditional response, such as industrial, top-down, or military resorted responses, I think our world has changed. These responses have proven to be very ineffective. So my message, I don't know, my understanding from this experience is that we need a very new leadership. We need a very new responses to crisis. We need to really combine our democratic understanding, gender understanding, labor understanding, and ecological understanding that we are now facing a series of new crises, and we are part of the problems. Our industrial civilization is part of the problems. I think we social movements can develop a new solidarity on this agenda.
Those are important messages, very meaningful and well appreciated. So thank you very much, Francis. And
thank you, Doti, for having me.
After this, we will see each other soon in some global alliances and movements for a post-pandemic world that is just and equitable and also sustainable and ecologically just. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Doti. Bye.